guys, welcome back to the Eat Like Rugby podcast. I am here today with two guests. It's not often we do two guests.
No, it's rare.
No, so Shack's back. Obviously, here he is.
Yeah, here I am. The main guy. We're back.
God.
Finally.
Shack has like this podcast alter ego, so here it is.
Hope it's it come out.
And we also have a first time on the Eat Like Rugby podcast guest today. Do we go Lachlan?
Yeah, hey everyone, Lachie.
Lachie Stewart. It's funny because when G comes on, she always goes, "Hey everyone, how you going?" And it's like, G, no one can answer you.
No one can answer you.
But Lachie is here today specifically to talk about running, which is exciting because I feel like running's such a big thing. Like obviously it's been big for a while now, but I don't feel like it's really going anywhere. So I thought it'd be super cool to just talk a little bit about people getting into running. Obviously, like our audience, as a little bit of a like context for you, Lachie, our audience are pretty much female, few males, but predominantly females. We do heaps of sort of like gym, hypertrophy style training, like they want to build the glutes, the shoulders, all the things. But then obviously just like with running taking off as well, people are kind of then asking like, how do I do it all? Or how do I balance it all? So I thought you would be such a cool person to come in and help us decipher this.
Cool.
Do you want to just like let everyone know a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Hey everyone, how you going? I'm Lachie. I'm a PT coach with Shack down at Revel. Started endurance events at the start of last year. It started with some half marathons and then the marathon, and eventually ended up into some 50K ultra marathons and a half Ironman as well. So I know exactly what Shack's going through and what he's going to go through this weekend, which is fun. But they are a lot of fun. They are tough, but really rewarding as well.
Like fun for you watching?
Yeah, fun for you watching. Fun for me watching, knowing I don't have to do it.
Yeah, guys. So we're actually recording because this will come out. When this comes out, you would have done it, which is exciting.
Yeah, wow.
So we're recording like literally 2 days out from Shack's half Ironman, 3 days out.
Yeah.
So this is super exciting. But Lachie's like been there, done that with the half Ironman.
Yeah.
Are you doing a full or?
I will one day.
Yeah.
I've got a few things on my plate to get done before a
Travel.
full. Yeah, travel.
Yeah.
Yeah, bought a one-way ticket to South America, which leaves in about 4 weeks.
That's
So-
exciting.
So cool.
Yeah.
That's why we're recording now, because I'm like, Lachie's out of here soon.
He's not coming back.
No, but that's really cool. So did you did you do uni, fitness? Like what did you study?
Yeah. Went straight out of high school into uni, sports and exercise science.
Yep.
And then straight into that into PT
Yep.
down in Sydney where I grew up, and then I moved up here a couple of years ago, and just the whole way through continued PT and coaching.
Yeah, love it. That's awesome. And what made you like get into the first half marathon? Was that when running was taking off, or were you ahead of the curve? Did you start the trend?
I reckon it was slightly before. I reckon
Yeah.
me and my mates like to say we're trendsetters on a few things. We kind of do things and then we see other people follow them. Maybe it's our big ego, but I think it was slightly before, and it just come about from our group of boys made a group chat, and we were like, fuck it, this year, let's kick some big goals. So we all outlined some, and a couple of us said we want to do marathons this year, and we just held each other accountable, and that's how we got into the running.
Oh my God. And so that was last year.
Yeah, the start of last year.
Yeah, wow. I feel like you kind of got into it around the same time,
Yeah.
like your own personal running.
Yeah, I felt the same way. 'Cause I feel like when I started working with Rebel Lachie, I was like, fuck, he does some cool shit.
You are a trendsetter, Lachie. No, that's cool. So before we get into the running chat, obviously Shack is here, and we all know that means we need a quote. Have you actually got one for us, or you can just pull one out?
Yeah, you want it now.
Yeah. Everyone's waiting for it.
Okay.
Shit, here we go.
You can't change the conditions, only how you deal with them.
Oh, I like
Nice one.
that.
That's
I
good
like
one.
that
It's
from
good.
you.
That's a good one.
Yes, that's a great one from you.
All right, guys. See you guys next week.
Where did you read that somewhere?
I've got it off
I know what you're going to say.
Ross Egley and like past. Been listening to a lot of potties lately and just taking bits and pieces of little knowledge.
No, I
everywhere.
love that. That's cool. It's like the have you seen that one that's like about the potato and the egg? Do you know what I'm talking
No.
about? Do you know what I'm
What
talking
came first, the potato
No.
or the egg?
No, it's like the same boiling water that softens the potato hardens the egg. It's not about the situation, but more so what you're made of.
I've heard of that
Yeah,
one.
okay. I like that.
So that's what that one made me think of.
That's cool.
What about
Yeah.
the new guest?
have
What
you got a quote for us, Lachie?
Yeah, I have a quote. I can think one up in my brain.
Okay, here we go. This will be good.
The quote is, do you think butterflies and caterpillars are the same animal or different animals?
Oh, that's not a quote. That's like a that's like a
riddle.
mind fuck.
Yeah, well, that's the question / quote.
Shit. Are they the same animal? Is that
What do you think?
I don't know. I've never thought
reckon
about
yes.
this.
You reckon yes, they're
Yes.
the same animal?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think they're different animals because one has wings and one crawls,
Yeah.
but there's probably the same soul,
Mate,
the same
yeah.
being.
Guys, we're not actually going to talk about running today because we're going to be stuck here for a while on this one. That's so interesting to think about.
It's actually so funny because he always asks you like that. It's like, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
After some class, I'm like, hang on, what do you say? Like, what that mean again?
Shaq's just in a spiral. No, I love it. So that's interesting. I like it. And I liked your quote. I'd say that's probably one of your best.
Oh, here we go.
I think the girls will like that one. They want to get t-shirts. They always say in the group, we need t-shirts with Shaq quotes on them.
All for that. Let's go.
With his face as well on it. That'd be cool.
In the
Just
little
a big
pocket.
smiling Shaq on the front.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, so let's get into the running chat. So let's just we'll just kind of open it up and then if shit comes up, we can talk about it along the way. But let's say someone is not a runner, hasn't been, doesn't have a running history and is like, I'm going to start running next week. What does this person need to think about?
They need to think about
consider?
running. And that needs to be the only thing on their mind. And if they're not thinking about running, morning, lunch, dinner, and sleep, if they're sleeping and not thinking about running, then sorry.
You're not
You're
serious.
not, you're not going to make it.
I love that.
So if they're doing other gym things, let's say, okay, let's start with this. How many times a week, realistically, if someone's like, okay, I want to start running, I'm not conditioned to it at all. Do I run every single day? Do I run 3 times a week? What do I do? Do you have a running program? Do you have a running program?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say it always depends on what you have the capacity to do.
Mm-hmm.
Some people might have the capacity to run 1 time a week. Like if you're a mum who has to deal with kids or gets to deal with kids every night and you only have 30 minutes on the weekend to yourself while the kids are training for sport or whatever, that could be what you need to start off with because that's what you have the capacity to do. For other people, they could lean up to 2 to 3 times per week, shorter efforts. I coach in a way that I'd rather see people do 2 to 3 shorter runs and just build the momentum on that rather than going out for a 10K, taking an hour on one day and then being wrecked for the rest of the week and then kind of trying to maintain the momentum that wasn't there into the next week. I think it's a bit harder. So
I feel like that's even super similar. We talk about that with dieting where people just go balls to the wall with a stupid diet and then they can't stick to it and then they start it again and it's just a bit of a shit show. Consistency is just not there. So I feel like that's for sure the same thing. When you said there, if people were to just go out and run 10Ks, I feel like some people just kind of think in terms of well, if I want to start running, as fast as I can and as hard as I can, as far as I can is the best thing. And I would say that's wrong, right? So why is that wrong? If someone was I want to start running, I'm just going to fucking put my shoes on, see how hard I can go, how far I can go. Why do we not want to do this?
Injuries is the first thing that comes to mind.
Yep.
You'd likely get injured. And you won't build the consistency in your training to maintain it. There'll be nothing maintained. I also think that it's a lot more impressive when someone builds on their running and is dedicated to their running in a plan rather than going balls to the wall and maybe shocking everyone with their 10K time or their distance. Maybe they go 12Ks when no one thought they could run over 2Ks. But I'd get way more impressed by the person who runs 2Ks consistently for 6 weeks rather than one 12K effort.
Yeah.
I love that.
For sure. I feel like so many things come to my mind. Everything you say, I've got a million questions. I feel like you've dropped before on the pod and even Jolie, way back in the day, Jolie dropped the quote of you need to run slow to run fast. Is that what you say?
Yeah, so I feel like
What does this mean?
It's about the longer, slower runs. So about not going balls to the wall.
Yeah.
fast as you can. Just try to get that condition in the legs, the hips, knees. And I feel like if, like you say, you need the capacity to do the long, slower runs, which help overall, but also need the other fundamentals like the tempos, interval runs that like help everything out in that one piece.
Yeah, so if you're writing a program for someone that's getting started, let's say it had like 3 runs a week, are some of them like faster, longer, slower? Like what do you want to include?
Generally, if someone's going from 0 kilometers a week, not running at all, you would get them on conversational pace runs only, which would be what you're talking about, run slow to eventually in the future run fast.
Yep.
And that would be something like, there'd probably be 3 different types of runs you'd give them to keep them engaged, which one would be a walk run for time, where you might say go out for 15 minutes, walk for 1 minute, run for 1 minute, alternating.
Oh yeah, like intervals.
7 rounds or whatever that is.
Yep.
The next run might be for time, where you're going for 15 minutes again, but doing as much running as you can and as much walking as you need to, and eventually building on that until it's a 15-minute non-stop run.
Yep.
And then probably the last type of run that you give them is maybe a 2K effort, where they're focused on making the whole distance without stopping.
Yep.
And building up those 3 types of runs till they get to a point where they're hitting 5Ks and 10Ks.
Yep. Yeah, love it.
That's cool, yeah. It just makes so much sense when you hear that. Like, yeah, when you see other people go the other way, going straight balls to the wall, long runs, I feel like you're just holding on to those injuries. They're going to come eventually.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
do it the smart way.
What about so I feel like when we talk about injuries, it's obviously just like we speak so much about people doing shit they're not conditioned for.
Yeah.
So you just kind of going out, and obviously if like your joints or anything is not conditioned to that thing, and then you just send it and go as hard as you can, you're probably going to feel quite shit the next day. And then often that's where we see like do nothing for a week because I'm fucked, I can't do anything for a week, and then I go again, and obviously like lack of consistency like we said. But what is sort of happening if we look at like a bit more of like the sciencey side of it? You know, obviously like zone 2 is talked about so much. And again, I feel like there would be people just thinking like in terms of fitness, like wouldn't it just make sense to sprint and be like as puffed as I could be? Wouldn't that make me fitter, or do you know what I mean? But is that sort of a bit incorrect? Like why do we push zone 2 so much? Or do you push zone 2 a lot? That should be the first question.
I think that zone 2 gets pushed a lot, not in terms of the heart rate point of view, but more in terms of the load that it puts on your body and the joints.
Yeah, right.
I think that if you were running zone 5, you would put too much stress on your joints to recover from.
Yep.
And keep a sustainable running fitness program.
Yeah.
If you're running zone 2, you're putting less stress on your joints, which means you can run more often. And I think I don't think it's so much about the zone 2. I just think it's more about how much stress you're putting on your body.
Like the intensity on everything. Yeah. So if someone's really like beginner, what are the zones?
So there you go.
Zone 1, 2, 3, 7, and 5.
And how do they work?
No, there's not. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Zone 5 is your anaerobic zone, where that's your 10 to 20 second sprints. They eventually work down to zone 3 and 2, which will be more... Zones cross over as well. They're not just strict. So
it's not like when your heart rate ticks over that one beat, you're in the next zone. Yeah.
It'll be like 165 is zone 2 and zone 3, for example. Zone 2 and 3, more zone 2 would be your easy aerobic, so more conversational paces. And then zone 1 would be your light walking.
Yep. Yeah, cool. And so if someone is, let's say like time... We'll come back to that. But let's say time isn't a factor. Someone's like, I got all the time in the world. I can hit the gym. I can run. I can do whatever. Should someone run every day? Like, would there be benefits to doing it every day, or should you actually just start with the 3 or?
I would say as long as your body can recover from the previous demands until your next run, which a lot of new runners probably hear that and think, fuck, I have no idea if my body's recovered. So as a general rule of thumb, until you're feeling ready and excited to go again, and you're not crawling out of bed, you're not limping down to grab your groceries from the ground, and you feel good again, moving your body, recovery between sessions is the most important thing.
Yep.
And when your zone 5 runs happen is when you need more recovery between runs.
Yeah.
That's why when people have zone 5 runs eventually in their running program, they usually alternate it with your zone 2 runs because there's less stress on the joints and body in zone 2 runs, meaning they can recover in time for that run.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's almost kind of like when we look at training, like gym training, you don't want to just go in and do 1 RMs every session.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
It's just not smart. And that's where, like, we speak about this so much where some people can just get into that mentality of thinking the heavier I can lift every session, the better it's going to be. But we've spoken so much about, like, progressive training and deloads and recovery and all of that. So it really is the same thing, like, coming into play here. If someone does have the time and they can fit in a fair few things, what do you guys think if someone's like, I want to keep doing the gym, like I love my leg day, especially like all the girls that, you know, in Eat Like Ruby, everyone's got like the booty goals. Like I said, some people want to build their legs, build their shoulders, whatever. If someone's trying to work out the split of like, I want to do gym, build a bit of muscle, but I want to run. Actually, let's ask first, like super common thing where people, remember like back in the day, it was like running more like you won't be able to build muscle if you're a runner.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I think that you just have to build up the capacity to be able to handle both at the same time. So probably again comes back to the, if you're going hard in your running sessions and you're not able to recover in time for that next day leg session, that's when all of your workouts will start to fall below a specific intensity. It'll feel hard because you're overloaded, you're cooked.
Yeah.
But it'll fall below that intensity and you won't be able to maintain progression.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's almost like we've spoken about before where people think the more I can go to gym, the more I can do, the better. But if you're doing 6 shitty sessions, like you're saying, because you just don't have anything to give, you're better to scale it back to 3 or 4 wicked sessions. So it's kind of the same thing playing out here. So if someone is trying to fit in like the gym and the running and everything, is there a way that you recommend, like if you were to train legs today, would you not run tomorrow? If you were to run today, would you not train legs tomorrow? I'm asking for myself pretty much. I always say to Shack, how should I set this up?
It's so, yes, I feel like it's a hard answer to the question. Like Locke says, like your capacity.
Yeah.
What you can do in that week.
Let's say I go to gym on a Monday and I'm like squat, deadlift, hip thrust, whatever I'm doing. I wake up Tuesday and I'm like, okay, clear leg DOMs. Don't run. Is that what you guys think?
It depends on what type of run it is and it depends on what goals you have. I think that ideally you would have a structured plan to allow you to not run the next day.
Yep.
Probably in an ideal world, you wouldn't run the next day to answer your question.
Yeah.
Depends how many days in the week you have and how many times training days you have a week.
Yeah.
But I'd probably say in a 10-week block, for example, you're going to focus more on
My girls are going to be hanging off your every word. So
you'll focus more on one goal. It might be increasing your speed for that 10-week block while maintaining your strength.
Yeah, I
think
love that.
Yeah, you can alternate those and next 10-week block, you might maintain your running speed with lower duration sessions and less intensities as well.
Yeah.
But that's where you'll go harder in your hip thrust and RDL sessions.
Yeah, I love that. That's so cool. And Shaq and I spoke a little bit about that in terms of dieting with people that are like wanting to diet for fat loss and then wanting to do shit like half marathons and turf games and all that with fuck all energy in
Basically
the tank.
impossible.
They're yeah. Well, we've done like 8 episodes where that's pretty much what we come down to.
Yeah.
But it's kind of that same thing where we said in that if you do have the fat loss goal and you do have the high rocks goal or whatever, that's totally fine. But you've got to pick times where you're like, I'm dieting for fat loss and I know my training intensity is going to suffer. So I'm not going to prioritize high rocks training. And then if I'm going into high rocks, I know that the fat loss goal has to go on the back burner for a while to have enough energy coming in. So I feel like it's that same sort of thing where it's like, if the goal is like building muscle, building strength, the running might have to cut back a bit and then vice versa, like you were saying.
Yeah. Definitely.
And one quote that I love, I always drop this in the Eat Like Ruby Girls, is there's no solutions, only trade-offs. Everything has a cost. And I feel like everybody wants to, especially when it comes to like body comp, dieting, training, all the things. Everyone's like, what's the solution? Like, what's the perfect split? How do I do it all? How do I have the rig and the diet and eat all the food and do the high rocks and like every single thing? So I feel like it just comes back to that where it's like, you have to decide what the priority is at that time and know that the other ones are going to suffer a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that's a
Agreed.
really good way to put it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's go. I wanted to talk about your training. So when you decided to did you start with a half marathon?
Yep. Started with the 5Ks in the group chat. One of my mates was like, oh, I've done a 5K today. And I'm like, fuck, I'll do a 6K tomorrow. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to do a 10K on the weekend. I'll do 2 10Ks in one day. And then eventually turned up into a half marathon.
So were you a runner?
No.
Not at all.
We just new goals, 2023, start of the year.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And then when did you do the first half?
The first half was early, maybe May.
Oh,
Yeah, May 2023.
Yeah, wow. And then, because then you did the half Ironman the next May, like May 2024.
Yep.
Yeah. And then, so then you went to a full marathon.
Yep.
When was that?
The full marathon was in June. I think the half was actually pushed back in March. And the May was the full marathon.
Yeah, right.
Half marathon in March, full marathon in May.
And then you went into the ultra.
Yeah.
Is that what you call it?
That's
An ultra?
impressive.
Yeah. Ultra marathon.
Is that 50?
Yeah, 50K at the end of the year. That was trail. It takes a lot longer than running because you might have, like, I remember I was 40Ks deep and I'm like, right, 10Ks, I've got an hour to go. Like, sweet, I can do this. But an hour up and downhill, or 10Ks up and downhill turns into 2 to 2.5 hours. And it's just it is literally an uphill battle.
Oh my God. Where did you do that?
Mount Kosciuszko in New South Wales.
Oh, wow.
That would have been cold too.
Yeah, the weather changed because we did it in summer in December.
Yeah,
so
okay.
it was relatively warm down at the base in Jindabyne. We were in T-shirts and shorts, but then you get up to the top and the weather just changes like that, And then winds come through and a bit of rain come through it as well. And then we were running next to snow in summer. It's pretty cool.
Oh my God.
That'd be so cool, dude.
And so how long did the whole thing take you?
6.5 hours.
For 50.
Yeah.
And like if you were to go do that just out on the road, what would that normally take?
Me?
Well, what is it like? What did a full
Probably
marathon?
an hour and a half. Nah.
He's fast.
Nah, not that fast. 50K.
You say things like you are so serious.
What
I'd
do you think I
say-
deal with?
That's why it gets me for a split second because I'm like, what? Even when you said the zones before, I'm like, zone 7.
Yeah.
So when you did the full marathon, like what's a full marathon take you?
3.5 hours. And
Yeah.
so that's 42 kilometres.
Yeah.
3.5 hours turns into 6.5 hours with an extra 8 kilometres.
Because
and
of
up and downhill.
the up and downs and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where you're going to head into
I definitely-
ultra.
Yeah, that'd be cool. One element train, how good's that?
Yeah, that's what I feel like is the thing for you because everyone keeps saying to me, like, do you think he'll keep doing the Ironmans? And I'm like, I think he's like the getting the bike ready and going down to the pool and all that is just a pain in the ass. Like with running, you just run out the door.
Yeah, little get some shoes, get a shirt, get some AirPods.
Just a
and off
bit
you go.
easier, like, yeah, just to make it work. So then you did you do the half at Port Macquarie?
Yeah.
So do they do both there?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so the half is what Shack is doing / would have done by the time this episode comes
Yeah.
out, the half Ironman. How long did that take you?
5.5 hours.
And what do you got?
Shaq's going to beat me for sure. I want him to beat me.
Way.
Yeah, I reckon he will. I reckon I have faith.
There's that. Why is that one guy you always try to chase, and it's like Lockie's getting further and further away from me. I'm like, no.
So what was do you remember the breakdown of the
Yeah. The swim was 40 minutes. The ride was 3 hours. And then the run was about an hour 40.
I feel like that's super close to what you're aiming for.
It's just a bike for me. I reckon. Maybe
Right.
a little bit longer. I reckon. Or the bike or the swim. I reckon is where I'm gonna go here or there.
I'm so interested to see you do it because I feel like with the triathlon, when you were prepping into the triathlon, like I'm like a big fan of the numbers and the scheduling and everything. So Jack will say to me like, oh, probably just add a few Ks every week until it comes around. And I'm like, no, let's sit down and work out. Like you want to get here, right now you're here. Let's schedule it all in. And with the triathlon, I was kind of watching you build up and I felt like you only just started to do those numbers
Near the end.
right near the end, and then you didn't really have a taper or anything, and you hadn't fully got comfortable with those distances on their own even before you went into the tri. Whereas with this one, I feel like you have. Like you've been riding 90 and then 95, 100.
Yeah.
Like you've been doing that for ages
fair while.
before it. So just feel like you're more conditioned. to the whole
interesting.
thing.
It's actually funny. Like,
Yeah.
I think Lockie said, like, oh, what are you doing this weekend? Oh, doing 100 and they're doing like 7Ks. Like, that's very specific. Like, yeah, ribs.
It's literally was on the fridge and it was like every week. But like he's the most unorganized person. That's why I said in the chat, don't forget to go to the Ironman on the weekend, Shack. He's so unorganized. And like I was just watching him every week just stand there and he would say shit to me like, yeah, I have to work all day and I'll probably ride 100 kilometers and I'll go to the pool and I'll get a haircut. And I'm like, what? Like you're doing my head in. But no, I think it's so cool. And it's even so cool when, like I said, most of the girls in Eat Like Ruby are really into gym and the sort of like typical bodybuilder kind of training and stuff. And I've always been into that. And even the last few weeks, when you were doing those big rides on the Sunday, I literally, not even joking, I was on the hack squat at the gym and it was just like heavy and I was hating life. And I'm like, had 2 to go. And I'm like, Shack is riding 95 kilometers. Like all you have to do, Ruby, is go down, go back up, go down and go up one more time. Like, and it's actually just so crazy to think about because I'm just like, as if I can't do it. It's about fucking 12 seconds of exercise.
Yeah.
And he's riding for 4 hours. Like,
Yeah.
it's just such a different thing.
And those 4-hour sessions aren't fun, eh?
Nah, I kept telling Shaq before he'd do it, I'm like, you are going to hate these so much because I hated them so much. And I hope me telling you how much you'll hate them made it
It made it a little bit easier.
Yeah, yeah.
I knew it wasn't going to be fun.
But I feel like nothing phases you. Like you walk out the door for a 4-hour ride and then you come back like, hey. And I'm like, how was it? Not bad, bit windy. Like what?
I think it's a bit more swear words in there, but
And it's
yeah.
funny because like G and I will get stuck in like a work. We'll just be like working. And you're like, I'm going for a 4-hour ride. We're still working. You walk back in and I'm like, has that been 4 hours? Like none of us have moved. Shaq's just ridden to Beerwah and back. No, but it's cool. So is 50 the furthest that you've done?
Yeah, 50
Because some people do like not
Yeah.
the 50 is crazy to me, but some people do like 100 and stuff. Hey,
100.
Do you reckon you'll go
there's
further?
Yeah, definitely. I'll do 100 and 160, which is 100 miles one day. And then you turn into get David Goggins and do like 200 Ks and all that stuff.
So 160 kilometers.
Yeah, it's called a miler.
I feel like a miler makes it sound so chill. Like I'm just heading down for a miler. Like that's wild. So if people do that, do they like how long would that take someone?
Over a day.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Do you stop?
You can stop and rest at aid stations, but generally for like 10 minutes, depending on the person. Some people race it and stop for like, they don't even sit down.
Yeah, but you're not like stopping and sleeping and getting up and going. Like you're doing it all in one go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Sit
wild,
down
eh?
in a chair, have some noodles, like have food, some noodles or whatever. But then as soon as you finish that in 5 minutes, you'll go again.
Yeah. Wow. So when you did the 50, did you eat much before? Like what did that look like?
Yeah. As always, carb load up a few days before the race, had a big meal the night before. I consumed a lot of my nutrition through fluid because it made it so much easier to get down. But then at the aid stations, they'd have some fruits and some breads and pastries and things like that where you would stock up for the next 15, 20 kilometers until the next aid station and eat them along the way.
Yeah. Did you, have you done much trial and error with that to find out what works for you? Like, some people are really sensitive to things like that. We've spoken a little bit about like training the gut and stuff. Yeah. Like, do you find...
Yeah, on my... I did a lot of training, a lot of 40K runs and 35 to 40K runs before it.
Yeah.
Mostly for the purpose of nutrition. They were easy runs. I wasn't racing them, but I was just trying to spend 4 to 5 hours out running while eating and seeing how my gut reacts.
Yep.
And luckily I'm the type of person that my gut doesn't react to much at all. So I found on most runs I was pretty sweet the whole way through, which made it good.
Yeah, I love that. We speak so much, like I'm such a fan of pre-training nutrition, even just for people in the gym. Like I know so many people that have gym goals or body composition goals, whatever, and just train on fuck all food. And it's like crazy. Even this morning going to that class, I was just like to Shaq, this blows my mind that people would do this on an empty stomach. Like I had eaten before it and I was still like struggling.
I'm fucking hungry.
Yeah, like that's crazy. And I think it's one of those things, like it's probably so off topic, but I think for a lot of women, when we think about like body comp and everything, in that mindset of eat as little as I can, train as much as I can or whatever. And it's like one of the biggest shifts I see with people that start to actually learn about nutrition and training and how it all works, and they do start to bring in pre-training, people are like, how the fuck did I used to like train with nothing? It's wild, hey?
That's the one thing I love seeing now is that old school mentality of the more you can do, the less you eat, the better you'll be. But now it's that big shift going on, like, oh, the more I can eat, the better I can perform. Like, it's definitely a big shift going on. I love that.
There is, but I feel like this is what's funny. Like, you think there's a big shift because we all do it and we all talk about it, and the people you talk to, like, you forget that people are still doing some really crazy things with dieting and stuff.
We're in our own bubble, hey, just surrounded by people who are doing it.
Even with nutrition, like, I've been saying the same shit for years. So I hit points where I'm like, everyone knows this stuff. I'm going to be out of a job soon because, like,
everyone knows it.
We've told everyone everything they need to know. But then people come along and say the craziest shit, and you're like, oh, I'm actually in my bubble, just not realizing all the crazy stuff that's still happening out there.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So if we think about the running programs that you do for people, is that something that you would personalize, or is it quite like, oh, you want to get started with running, here's the program?
It is mostly personalized because everyone has different goals and everyone has different starting points as well. Starting points is a big one, and your goal, they make up what your training program is. So I'd rather personalize it than just give someone
like a generic.
Yeah, generic.
Yeah. And so if someone was like, I feel like 10Ks is probably something people work towards. If someone was full beginner and then they're like, I want to work up to 10K, what time frame do you reckon they're looking at? What should they look at?
Starting from zero?
Yeah.
Starting from having a gym background?
Let's go.
That would be a different answer.
Let's go completely nothing.
Completely nothing.
Like I've actually been a couch potato for 25 years and now I want to run 10K.
I would
That's not me.
Say if you want to put a time frame on it, my time frame guess would be 30 weeks.
Yeah, so 6-ish months.
Yeah, 6 months.
Yeah. Which I think is like reasonable because, you know, like obviously these days so much shit is just like instant gratification. But we say all the time, like you're asking your body to do shit it's never done before. And like you said, you don't want to just wake up tomorrow, have a crack at the 10 and fucking hope for the best. Like it is a progressive thing. So what if someone did have a gym background but not running?
I think they could shorten that because their body would be able to handle the loads that we were talking about earlier on the joint. So they'd probably be able to get more running in per week and more distance in per session, which means that you might turn the 30 weeks into 16 to 20.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I think that's
sick.
Good, enjoyable for people. So if this is what I've been asking Shack, and you've given me some good stuff, but I'd like to see what you say. If like we will talk about myself, I'll just make it all about me. Obviously, like my training, and I'd say a lot of my girls are the same, or the girls that listen, is very much just like hip thrust, squat, deadlift, leg curl, leg extension. Like it really is about kind of body comp and aesthetic. So if you're then looking at going into running, I've said to Shack, like, is there shit that people should be incorporating into their training for like plyos, mobility, warm-ups, sort of just getting like, I don't think my joints would have handled any like impact. You know what I mean? Like they're probably strong and they can do heavy lifts, but they don't do a lot of like impact plyo sort of stuff. So would you suggest people bring that into their training?
I think that adding plyos would almost add more intensity on their joints.
Like
to their
too
training.
much?
Yeah, almost too much if they're coming from a gym background but not a running background.
Yep.
So I would leave that until you're looking to improve your performance after the initial base phase of hitting your first 21 kilometers, for example.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah. You can probably work it. You can definitely work it in ways where it doesn't put as much load on your joints. But I think in that way, you'd have to spread out the running sessions more, which means you're doing less running, which probably also means you're going to reach your target later.
Yeah.
Without saying it, the more running you can do earlier, the quicker you'll reach it without going too far, finding that middle point.
Yeah, for sure. So then what if we think more in terms of just like prehab, mobility, anything that you recommend people do? Like even Shack would sometimes say like bird dogs or calf raises or things like that to condition certain parts of the body for running.
I think we probably need to look at the most prevalent parts that get injured by new runners, which would probably be the shins and the knees and the hips. And I think prehabbing around those, making them strong without putting intensity on the joints would lead to a better prep than not including those.
Yep.
So that would be things like calf raises and extending out your calves as well to stretch them the other way, not only shorten them in the calf raise, but extend them out by lengthening out the muscle.
Yep.
That would help, and your shins would be worked from that as well.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, because I feel like shins is huge. So calf work to help the shins.
Yep, calf work, as the calf shortens, the shins will lengthen and vice versa.
Yeah.
And that will help the range of the muscle, and short muscles is generally where you get injured. So shortening and lengthening both sides of the lower leg would help. It would help mobilize the ankle as well, which means the ankle's moving in its full range of motion, which also means that the muscles are moving in their full range of motion, leads to less injuries.
Yep.
And then that can just be worked into every other joint, the knees and the hips, by lengthening the quads and then lengthening the hamstrings and shortening the other side at the same time, and working through your hips as well.
Yeah.
Building a strong core is a good one as well.
Yeah.
Through your bird dogs and your dead bugs and things like that.
Yeah. So with that, like quad, hammy, calf sort of stuff, like really it's like a fair bit of mobility stuff. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
And like, would you advise people to do that? Like if I'm going for my run tomorrow, do I do that before my run? Do I do that on other days? Is there a certain way that you would tee that up?
Yeah, you definitely want to warm up before every single run, and that will come through. There are specific general warm-ups that you can do, but it's probably best to, over the first month or two of your running, find a warm-up that works best for you. Like, is probably a phrase repeated in nearly all of fitness, find what works for you.
Yeah.
And that would be working on specific areas. If you generally have really tight hips, then you spend more time on your hips.
Yeah.
If you find your calves never feel sore after a run or before a run or on your off days, then you probably can spend less time on it and work on your hips a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about shoes?
Shoes.
Actually, one thing I've seen that's like so interesting, I don't know if you posted or you reshared it, was like taking the piss out of people that...
Yeah.
You taking the piss out of people?
Yeah.
Must be the wrong guy.
Yeah, it
Right.
must be me. I think it's that guy over there.
Training in the shoes that they compete in, or
Yeah.
is that something people shouldn't be doing?
Yeah. People were doing a lot of weight training and all of their runs in shoes that shorten your calf muscles and your Achilles, which would lead to injuries.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So are they running shoes or they're not running shoes?
They're racing shoes.
Right.
And because they are racing shoes, they put specific impacts on the joints and the muscles.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that on every single run, too much impact leads to injuries. And that's what we see a lot with people wearing the race shoes too much.
Yeah, right. So then you would want to like, you've got about a million pairs of shoes.
That's
This
why
is
I've got so many shoes. You
Yeah,
need like
right.
race shoes, a long run shoe, and even like interval shoes. Like there's all different types that benefit you in different ways.
Expensive sport.
Ideally, you get onto... I'm also not certified to say this. I've never learnt about shoes.
Yeah.
But from my experience, what I've seen is that ideally new runners would get into a shoe with a lot of cushioning on the bottom, because that cushioning would put less joints on your muscles and your joints. You would probably find that soft cushion shoe through specific running stores like the Running Company on the Sunshine Coast and down in Sydney as well. Those type of places would be your best bet, rather than trying to find one on Rebel Sports online.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so then if you've found your race shoe, when you say race shoe, that's like the shoe you wear on the day. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, you would try and run in it a little bit.
Yeah.
If you want to go brand spankers on the day,
Yeah, but
you'll be blisters.
what would you
Is that a
recommend?
thing?
Like,
Generally, if I just bought a race shoe for the half Ironman and the Goldie, for example.
Yep.
I would, in an ideal world, if I was rich, I probably would have bought 2 different race shoes for those, but I'm not rich, so I'd just wear the same one.
Yeah.
Before the half Ironman, I think I ran in it twice. I did a 3K run and a 5K run to just make sure the shoe was feeling sweet. I've also owned that pair of shoe before, so I
Yeah.
know that
Yeah.
the shoe was sweet for me, but that specific shoe, I wore it for a 3K and a 5K and then the half marathon. And then because I'd worn it on the half marathon, I'd worn it once before on a shakeout run before Goldie Marathon, which is just 3 kilometers. And then I wore it for the race.
Yeah. can we, like, I'm just going to fully pivot the convo because you said shakeout run and it made me think, what is the advice in terms of like tapering and that sort of thing? So let's say someone's done the 30 weeks or roughly whatever they're doing to get to, did you say 30 weeks to 10 or 21 Ks?
Depends on the point. I'd like to say over, and then if they're expecting 30 weeks for 10 from a couch, from no exercise history, then anything under that is a bonus.
Okay, yeah.
So that's probably the higher end of the scale, I would say.
Yeah. Let's say someone's just spent 6 months like prepping for their, whatever their distance is, their race, and they're like good, they're feeling good. When, like, do you deload, taper? How long for? What does that look like?
Yeah. Before I enter a race, I would taper. A half marathon to a 10K would be more 2 weeks. A full marathon to a 3K to a half Ironman would be more a 3-week taper. And the taper is just all about keeping the muscles fast while putting less load through the body and impact on the joints so that your muscles and joints can be fully recovered before you go for an all-out effort on race day.
Yeah.
Just to get the body really, really fresh after you've put so much work in and to allow the body to recover before you hit that race day.
Yeah. So I love that. So if someone is, let's say you're working to a half marathon, in a like perfect world, perfect training program, would someone actually run, would you make sure that you run 21 Ks before your taper and your actual half or whatever? Like, do you make sure that a person can actually factor that in? Or is like the first time you run 21 Ks on the day?
I think the first half marathon you do, generally the first time you run 21 kilometers will be on the day.
Yeah.
Because the adrenaline and the race day environment will take you the 3Ks over. Generally, you probably work up to an 18K in your training.
Okay, that was my next question.
And then taper off after that for 2 weeks and then hit your 21 the week after, which will be, again, that progression that you've been doing over the whole block. But the race day atmosphere will help you get there even more.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, so because I feel like I just want people to be able to piece it together a little bit. So you're looking at like anywhere from 3 to 6 months, depending on how conditioned you are, like what your starting point is, and you want to progress through, say, 2 to 3 runs a week, like in an ideal world, 2 to 3 runs a week and a bit of strength training as well. And then you're progressing and intercept if there's anything you would recommend differently. And then so progressing through that, like gradually building distances, paces, all the things.
Caveat, asterisks, building the distance every week, but every 3, possibly 4 weeks, having a step back week where it's kind of like a little taper where you allow your body, like a deload, where you allow your body to recover before you increase the intensity again through the next 3 weeks deload. So it eventually looks like those mountain peaks.
Yeah. Yes, I love that. That's cool. And then hitting the point where you're, say, like 2 to 3 weeks out, you've come close to the distance, but maybe not fully hit the distance. And then you do a taper from there. And what does a taper look like? Let's say in that scenario of like you've hit 18 Ks 3 weeks out and you're going to run 21 in 3 weeks' time. What happens in that 3 weeks?
You would look at the peak amount of volume you've done in terms of kilometers in your peak week, which would be that 18-kilometer week. You might have done 30 kilometers as your peak week. So that would have been 18 plus a 7 plus a 6 maybe. My maths is bad, but
no, I get
around the 30K mark. That's 100% of your peak week.
Yeah.
The first week of the taper would be between the 60 to 75% mark. So of 30, that would be maybe 20 or something like that.
Yeah.
Like maths is terrible.
Like take back like a third of it kind of.
Yeah. Take back a third of it and then take back another third of it to 30 to 40% the week of, and then you'll hit your race on that day. So you go from your most amount of kilometers at 100% to 60 to 75% to 30 to 40%, and then the race day on the weekend. Yeah.
So if someone, let's say you're running Sunday in an event, what does that week look like? There's a few runs in that week before it.
Yeah.
If you're running 21 kilometers on the Sunday, what are you doing from Monday up to the weekend? Are we just giving a full free program here?
I prefer this gauge than me, guys.
I'd say in the week leading up to, the main priority above anything else is to make sure you're feeling right for race day.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling burnt out in the last week and you're feeling less motivated, then you're probably going to lean towards resting more often than you think you should, just so that your body's fully recovered in, so your mind's mentally recovered as well before race day. In terms of what you'll actually do, you will do some light runs with a few short effort intensities to keep the muscles fast and to keep the neurological adaptations fast as well before your race day. So that'll probably look like a 5K run on Tuesday with 2 separate kilometre efforts that are fast. And then later in the week, a 3 kilometre run with 1 kilometre that is fast in the middle. And then you're on your race at the end of the week.
Yeah, right. So I feel like it's almost like you taper through the 3 weeks, but then you're almost even doing a small taper in that last week as well, like going 60% of that and then 20% of that kind of thing.
Definitely.
And something that came to my mind when you were saying all that is like we talk about deloads in like the gym sense, in strength training and that. And, you know, sometimes people say like, oh, I don't feel like I need a deload. And first of all, I normally say to people, like, if you genuinely feel like you don't need a deload, you probably need to ramp it up a little bit. But secondly, I think the deload is one of those things where even if you felt like you were quite pumped and keen to keep going, it's almost like, I always like to compare it to like a weekend or a holiday or something where like when you know it's coming, you kind of are like building to it, then it comes, you get to chill for a while. And then it's really common with my girls to be like, I don't want to deload, I want to keep getting after it. Then when they start deloading, they're like, fuck, I didn't realize I needed this. Yeah. And then as they get towards the end of the deload week, they're like, fuck, I'm keen to go again. And it's like that specific energy of like, fuck, I'm keen to go again, to me is like one of the biggest reasons that we deload. Because you like build that back up and you get that little vibe of like, okay, cool, yeah, it was chilled and that was nice, but I'm fucking keen to go. And I think that's so important because I always say to people, like, imagine if you just went to work 365 days a year. Like, you're going to hit the point where you're just like, fuck this, and you probably won't go and you'll take 3 weeks off or whatever. Whereas the deload is almost like, if you feel like you don't need a deload, that's like almost a win because you can, like, we want to deload before we feel like we fully need it. Like, you don't want to hit a wall and be like, I fucking need a week off. Like, you want to intercept a little bit earlier and go, I'm going to scale back a little bit before I hit the wall.
Yeah.
Agreed?
Definitely. Yeah.
And then, like, you go through that week and then you're like, okay, cool, I've had my break. Now I'm keen to go.
Yeah. Like taper week for me is like the best 3 weeks. Eat more food, less training. Like, it's honestly the best time.
Yes.
I love it.
Jack's been whinging about his food and I'm like literally in a deficit. And he's like, oh, all this rice, all these lollies. I'm like, out.
It can get exhausting, to be honest, eating so much food.
We talk about that with like because we have girls that do like muscle gain phases, high calories and all of that. And whenever people are on low calories, they're like, I'd love to do that. And then as soon as when you get on a high calorie diet, because I think when you're on a low calorie diet and you see people doing high calories, you just think like chocolate chips, pizza, like who the fuck doesn't want to do that?
Yeah.
And then when you're actually doing it intentionally, you're like, it's just more rice and more fruit and more bread and more cereal. And you just hit the point where you're like, I don't actually want it.
Legit, like last night, like having 2 packs of rice, I was like, I'm done. Like,
no, it's so true. Yeah. Anything else? Any other words of wisdom for people getting into running?
My last word of wisdom for today is as long as it's sustainable for you. I think that circles back to what we started talking about at the start of the conversation, rather than going out for your 10K run, which you wouldn't be able to sustain every single week, especially if you're someone with other responsibilities. If you have kids or work 2 jobs or at uni, for example, that wouldn't be sustainable for you.
Yeah.
What would be sustainable is 3 short runs in the week, 15 to 20 minutes long. And then once that becomes your norm, then you can build on that and increase the sustainability level.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that so much. We say that heaps with girls who even full beginners that even just start looking at like tracking their steps and stuff. Like if you realize that you get 4,000 steps a day, don't start aiming for 15,000 next week. Like aim for 5 or 6. And then like you said, when that becomes your new normal, can I get 7? Can I get 8? And even then finding the point where you're like, okay, cool, 8 is the max. And maybe for some people that's like, okay, 3 6K runs are my max. Like I'm not doing a 21, I'm not doing a full marathon or whatever. Like just finding, I think it's about finding like the sweet spot of like where can I push my edge a little bit, but it's not ridiculous for me.
Yeah,
I
exactly
think.
right.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's literally the same with like dieting, training, steps, running, every single thing. Like, there's times where you want to push it and get after it a little bit, but you also want to look and go, okay, if I'm going to do this long term,
What's the
I'm not going to
smartest
do it
way?
like a dickhead.
Yeah.
I think that there are so many things that people throw around and so many bits of information that are really appealing and they're really tasty and they look like they're going to provide you with that next edge. But in all
Who
of
are
the
you talking
areas,
about, Lockie?
in all of the
I
areas,
don't want to get sued. Don't drop any names.
at the end of the day, what works across your dieting and your running and your training are all the same thing. It's just sustainability, progressive overload, things you can maintain, working that little bit harder each week or so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it.
Love that.
If someone's listening thinking, I'm picking up what he's putting down, I want to get into running, are you going to be a running coach when you're in South America?
Yeah, not common knowledge yet, but by the time this podcast's
Yeah.
out, it will be common knowledge.
Okay, so if people want to hit you up for running, they can.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming, obviously, being in South America, you do online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will be all online. Unless you want to fly out to South America and find where I am on the most remote little town in Argentina, then you can do that as
Oh,
well.
mate, so that'd be pretty hard.
No, that's cool. So where can people find you?
You would have to fly out to Sydney and then fly out. I think you have to land in Chile, catch a bus to
Are you taking notes,
Mendoza.
Shaq?
Once you're in Mendoza, 6-hour bus to this little town.
That's actually what you're doing.
Probably. It probably is, to be honest. But people can find me on Instagram. At Lachlan Stewart PT is my Instagram handle.
We'll tag him in the podcast or whatever, wherever we do. George is nodding. The tech team's on it. No, that's awesome. Thank you so much for coming in, Lockie. I feel like there's lots of literally, like, there's girls in my mind that are always asking about running, so I can imagine they're loving it and taking all their notes. So thank you for coming in. Thank you for coming in, Shack. All the best on
Thank you.
Sunday.
Thanks for having me.
I think when the way all of the scheduling is going to work out, I feel like you'll be technically, when the pods drop, you'll probably be back next week or the week after talking about the half Ironman and turf. Are you doing turf?
I am. Yeah, turf in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Less than a couple of weeks.
So soon, next weekend.
Yeah.
So much happening. The last couple of weeks, it's crazy.
Yeah. So we'll get Jack back in like probably mid-October it'll end up being to talk about it all and the time. Are you like actively telling everyone what time you're gunning for, or are you not wanting to put that out there?
Under 6.
Under 6. Yeah.
And whatever happens from that is a bonus.
Watch this space. I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming in, and we'll be back next week. Thanks,
Thanks, guys.
guys.